OrthoVellum, clear orthopedic teaching, anatomy, imaging, and the decisions that decide the outcome. An overweight 13-year-old limps into clinic with a month of knee pain. The knee examines perfectly normally. Where is the lesion, and why might this child leave with a hip that is ruined for life? Here is the one-line answer. A slipped capital femoral epiphysis is a Salter, Harris type 1 failure of the proximal femoral growth plate. The epiphysis, the ball, stays seated in the socket, while the neck and shaft slip forwards and rotate outwards beneath it. Almost everything else in this lecture follows from that single sentence. Build the anatomy. The capital epiphysis sits on the femoral neck, tethered by the growth plate, the physis. That plate is layered, a resting zone, a proliferative zone, then the hypertrophic zone, which is its mechanically weakest layer. Feeding the head are the retinacular branches of the medial femoral circumflex artery, which climb the posterosuperior neck and supply roughly 80 to 90% of the epiphysis. Hold on to those vessels. They are the reason avascular necrosis is the complication we fear. Now watch it fail. Around the growth spurt, the physis becomes more vertical, so body weight crosses it as shear rather than compression. At the same time, the reinforcing perichondrial ring thins, and hormonal shifts widen and weaken the hypertrophic zone. Add obesity, and the plate cleaves. A Salter, Harris type 1 slip through the hypertrophic and provisional calcification zones. The epiphysis stays in the socket, the neck rides up and forwards, the head comes to lie behind and below. That is the whole disease in one movement. So who slips? This is a disease of the adolescent growth spurt, peak age 10 to 16 years, boys more often than girls by roughly 2 or 3 to 1, and very often a child carrying excess weight. The overall incidence is around 10 to 11 per 100,000 children, and it is rising in step with childhood obesity. And critically, 20 to 40% will go on to slip the other hip. Most slips are mechanical, an overweight adolescent at the growth spurt. But when the picture is atypical, a child who is younger than expected, unusually short or thin, or who has delayed puberty, or a slip that is bilateral, think endocrine and screen. Hypothyroidism, growth hormone abnormalities, and hypogonadism all weaken the plate. So does the renal osteodystrophy of chronic kidney disease. Find such a cause, and you should lower your threshold for fixing the other hip prophylactically. 3 classifications exist, but they are not equal. The temporal labels, acute under 3 weeks, chronic beyond, or acute on chronic, merely describe the history. Southwick grades the deformity, but the one that predicts the outcome is Loder, and it turns on a single question: can the child bear weight? A stable slip still allows walking, with or without crutches, and carries an avascular necrosis rate under 1%. An unstable slip means the child cannot stand on the leg at all, and the risk of avascular necrosis climbs to roughly 47%, whatever you do next. Southwick grades severity by the head-shaft angle, measured on the frog leg lateral and compared with the normal side, using about 12 degrees as the reference if both hips have slipped. Under 30 degrees is mild, 30 to 50 is moderate, greater than 50 degrees is severe. And severity matters, because the severe slip drives CAM-type femoroacetabular impingement and early osteoarthritis, the deformity you may have to correct later. Clinically, the trap is referred pain. The slip is often felt in the thigh or the knee, not the hip, so an adolescent limping with knee pain and a normal knee must have a hip radiograph. On examination, the hallmark is the Drayman sign. As you flex the hip, it is obliged into external rotation because the displaced metaphyses catches against the anterior acetabulum. You will also find loss of internal rotation, a Trendelenburg or antalgic gait, and in a severe slip, apparent shortening of the leg. And always examine the other hip. To the imaging, Always get an AP pelvis and a frog leg lateral, never accept the front view alone. On this AP, the changes are deceptively subtle. Compare the two hips and look for a physis that is widened and woolly, and for an epiphysis sitting lower than it should against the neck. The signs are quiet, which is exactly why the slip gets missed. Now the sign, taught where we own the geometry. Draw Klein's line along the superior border of the femoral neck. In a normal hip, it clips the lateral edge of the epiphysis. When it fails to intersect the epiphysis, that is the Trethwan sign, the head has slipped below the line. Beside it, the physis itself is widened and irregular. Two further early clues live on the AP. Steele's metaphyseal blanch sign, a crescent of density where the displaced epiphysis overlaps the metaphyses, and loss of Capener's sign, the normal triangular overlap of the neck on the posterior acetabular wall. The frog leg lateral is where the diagnosis lives. It throws the epiphysis into profile, so the posterior and inferior slip that hid on the front view becomes obvious, and it is the view on which the Southwick angle is measured. If the hip is too painful to frog because the slip is unstable, use a cross-stable lateral instead, which shows the same thing without moving the leg. Management rests on one doctrine: fix the slip in situ and never force a reduction, because forcing it tears the retinacular vessels and can drive the avascular necrosis rate towards 100%. The implant is a single, central, cannulated screw placed perpendicular to the physis and aimed at the center of the epiphysis on both views. A stable slip is fixed semi-urgently within a few days. An unstable slip is an emergency. Theater within 24 hours, gentle positioning, and no traction. A severe or chronic slip is still pinned where it lies. The residual deformity is corrected later by an osteotomy, an osteochondroplasty, or, in expert hands only, a modified done. And counsel every family about the other hip. With a 20 to 40% risk, prophylactic fixation is offered most readily to the young child, under about 13, or where there is an endocrine or renal cause. Here is the result: a single screw up the neck and across the plate, arresting the slip exactly where it lay. Note what has not been done. The chronic slip has not been pushed back. Confirm the screw is central on both views, that at least 5 threads cross the physis, and that the tip stays clear of the joint, because a screw left in the joint causes chondrolysis. The complication that defines the disease is avascular necrosis, death of the femoral head. After a stable slip, the risk is under 1%. After an unstable slip, it rises to roughly 47%, and this is largely decided at the moment of the slip, not by how well you pin it. Nothing you do matters more than recognizing and respecting an unstable hip. Beyond avascular necrosis, know the others. Chondrolysis, acute loss of articular cartilage, the joint space narrowing below 3 mm, classically follows a screw left in the joint, though it can also occur without any penetration. Cam-type impingement from the residual bump is the slow route to osteoarthritis, even after a mild slip. The other hip may slip in turn. And guard the 2 traps that sit either side of the slip. A febrile child who refuses to bear weight is septic arthritis until proven otherwise, and a well adolescent with isolated knee pain may be hiding a slip, so image the hip. In summary, stability predicts avascular necrosis, so ask whether the child can bear weight. Fix the slip in situ with a single central screw and never force a reduction. Treat the unstable slip as an emergency and the stable slip semi-urgently. Remember that knee or thigh pain in an adolescent means a radiograph of the hip. And counsel every family about the 20 to 40% risk to the other hip. See the slip, pin the slip, and you save the hip for a lifetime.